have your comments online to enlighten all of us. So, Gary.
Well, thank you, Pierre and Hiroko. Fantastic book. If I'm jealous, I wish I'd written it, but that makes me very pleased to comment on it here today. For those of us that are practitioners of comparative advantage, the locavore concept is greatly frustrating, and I think you bring arguments of great depth and breadth that help reveal its flaws. So it's very helpful. I don't know if anybody caught it, but the Wall Street Journal summarized Pierre's book this past weekend, and what they said was that he appears to have fun being a gleeful debunker. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, actually, you would have fun every day here in Washington. It's like shooting fish in the barrel. Before we came in, Pierre said, okay, now, Gary, you're going to help me to look reasonable, right? And I said, I thought that's why you Canadians keep us Americans around. So, of course, as I look at foodies, this local, organic, small argument, I guess what I equate it to is fundamental Islam. There's this rejection of modernity, biotechnology, pesticides, fertilizers, all bad. There's the goal to take us back, I think, is the pictures that Pierre showed centuries ago when life was simpler and supposedly better, even though we obviously know better. And this is all framed in the context of social progressivity. And actually, I don't see it that way at all. It's actually quite reactionary. If we look at the Obamacare supporters, since that's a big issue here this week in Washington, they all scoffed when the argument was made, well, what's next, mandating that we eat broccoli? Well, of course, recently we've seen New York suggest mandating 16-ounce soft drinks. We have priority grants saying that local food will be bought for food aid programs. I don't think it was that far in out of possibility. One of my favorites for sort of viewing this in context is a book by Andrew Potter called The Authenticity Hoax. And what Potter suggests is that there are certain people, generally wealthy, educated people, who feel the need to show their superiority. And so they will drive their Prius to their Whole Foods market to show how much smarter they are than the rest. He suggests that what they're in search of are positional goods. And I suppose since this is a younger crowd, we can say you could equate it to hipsters, right? I mean, hipsters are into something until it becomes of general popularity, and then they move on to something else. It has to be unique is the way they look at it. Well, Pierre is a polite Canadian, so he didn't get into U.S. politics, but I thought I would touch on it because I think it's very relevant to the whole thing. Back in 2008, the populist agriculture community that was very pleased when the Obama campaign basically said that they were going to level the playing field between agribusiness and small farmers. And I couldn't quite figure out what they meant by level the playing field. I kind of equated it, if you look at the game of football, we have a player called Trindon Holliday with the Texans. He's 5'5" and 165 pounds. And then we have a player, Langston Walker, who's with the Raiders, 6'8", 366 pounds. So Walker is 25% taller and 125% heavier. Yet they both play on the same field in the same game, obviously delivering different goods to the game. And they're compensated according to the value that they deliver. One player, the smaller player, doesn't require a subsidy in order to compete on the field with the larger player. And agriculture is much the same. And yet we have the U.S. government really trying to subsidize, whether it's Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, or my favorite is there was a $230,000 grant to study if New England could become self-sufficient in food. It really gets quite silly. Essentially, in Washington, banks can be too big to fail, but farms can be too big to succeed. It really is an awkward thing. And I like to ask the question, is it just coincidence that a country like Greece has the highest percentage of population in farming in Europe? Or that Greece, Portugal, and Italy have the smallest average farms in Europe? As I think Pierre pointed out, there is a relationship here. We have a farm bill that's moving, and it's a very current topic, and I thought I would mention a couple things in it. The Senate added $115 million to help farmers certify organic. This is a $31 billion industry that grew by 50% since 2008. It doesn't really need a subsidy. But the other part that I think you'll find hopefully as humorous as I do, the Farm Bill is really about picking winners and losers. That's what it's about. And Senator Jim DeMint, he had to have had a great sense of humor. He got the Senate to pass a sense of the Senate resolution that nothing in this act shall manipulate prices or interfere with the free market. We do have this big problem, and I think my challenge to you, Pierre, I think you've hit this one out of the park, but I think there are other books that you can write, because we have a lot of issues that are basically driven by emotion and not science or economics. And you hit on a few of them, but I just wanted to mention a little bit about them. Organic. The Organic Trade Association announced 2 months ago, very proudly, that organic agriculture produces thousands of more jobs than if the same food were produced conventionally. So it's sort of the Martin Feldstein conundrum of, is it a jobs program or is it about productivity? Food safety, you covered that very well, about the myths. We have this problem where people who should and know a lot about food but don't really. The celebrity chef Rachel Ray was on The View a couple weeks ago, and she was asked, well, if hamburger is pink inside, is it safe to eat? And she said, well, if it comes from a grass-fed or an organic cow. And, of course, it doesn't matter whether the cow is grass-fed or organic or if it ate Krispy Kreme donuts all day long. It's not going to change the safety of that hamburger that's cooked. And pink is not even a good color to judge the safety. It's 160 degrees. That's the science. It has to be 160 degrees or better. So here we have very impactful people in our society that are misleading the public. The next one is animal welfare. Talk about an issue driven on emotion. We're now forcing the industry basically to get rid of gestation stalls and battery cages and without any science. My favorite is a study out of Belgium in which one of the most tedious jobs is basically catching the chickens. And so they ask people, well, is it better that a machine catch the chicken or humans? And if you were urban, female, concerned about animal welfare, you are more likely to say, oh, humans should pick up the chickens. But of course, the science is completely the opposite. The chickens showed much less stress under the machine because humans were viewed as a predator, which we are. Machines are inanimate objects. More recently, we've had a ban on horse slaughter, and that we have all kinds of ill coming out of that. But the media is the other. We have essentially a media that presents studies that haven't been peer-reviewed or simply association studies, and they come out on food every day, and we battle this. One this week was by ABC7, speculation that people who don't have as many allergies in rural areas because they get their food locally. Well, rural people get their food globally, just like urban people. The opportunity here, I think, is to write more, Pierre. You contended to educate, but I'll end with sort of a story about a little bit of caution here. Does anybody here live in Fairfax County? Okay, Fairfax County. You're very fortunate, or maybe you're not. What is it? Number 2 county in the country in terms of undergraduate degrees, number 3 in terms of advanced degrees, number 3 in terms of median income. Have you ever heard the Real Food for Kids campaign? At this juncture, 32 school PTAs in Fairfax County have signed on to this, including Thomas Jefferson High School, considered the number 1 high school in the country. The head of this campaign was asked, well, what do you think about disodium isonate? And he said, if I can't pronounce it, I don't want it in my food. Well, isonate is basically nothing but fermented vegetable starch. It was invented by the Japanese thousands of years ago. It's actually an expensive food ingredient because what it brings to food is the umami taste, which is a very treasured taste. And they have other things they want to get rid of, and the usual suspects, MSG, high fructose corn syrup, and hydrolyzed protein. That's kind of a funny one because the body naturally hydrolyzes protein. Autolyzed yeast. Anybody want to take a guess what autolyzed yeast is? Actually, I've got a gift here. If anybody can guess what autolyzed yeast is, think about it. Is anybody? I'll even give you a hint. You got a gift here. It's from down under. Vegemite. You win. You collect this after. They want organic milk served. I was waiting for them to sort of jump the whole way and say we want unpasteurized milk served. I will leave you with this, Pierre. I've done 2 surveys now of industry in the past couple months as I've gone to meetings, and I asked, well, what should we do about this? You know, all this skewing of what the food supply is about. And I said, you know, should we fight it? Should we capitalize on it? Well, of course, industry's fairly smart, so I had a fairly significant bunch that said, well, we should both fight it and capitalize on it. And I suspect what they're doing. But again, I want to thank you and Hiroko for making a very important and valuable contribution to trying to edify the public about our food supply. Thank you.